So welcome to everyone who is here. This is our estimating techniques across the project lifecycle webinar. We've been doing a series of webinars over the last few weeks, and everything that's going to be learned today is going to be part of the project management series. So Mark, who you will see, as well as myself above me, I think. I don't know, it depends what screen you're on, whether you see him above me or below me, who knows. He's going to be taking you through this webinar today. And so if you have any questions as we go through, we love questions. So feel free to pop those in the chat that you can see on your screen. And we will revisit them at the end in a little Q&A session that I will be there for. I'm going to hop off in a moment so that you can have Mark as your undivided attention. So here he is, Mark. I'll introduce him fully now. This is Mark Eaton. He's our training manager here at Certain Limited, the one and only. So as I say, he'll be kind of taking you through the webinar today. So I'm going to hop off now, and when you comes to Q&A, I will rejoin you. So enjoy, everyone. I'll turn myself off now.
Thanks, Sophie. Hi guys, sorry for the big head. It's an automatic feature of Adobe Connect. There you go, that's better. You can see a little bit more, and it's not such a massive head type thing. So guys, welcome to the latest webinar. It's a part of our project management series, and we're going to focus on planning, particularly estimating within planning today. As you can see in the bottom left hand corner of your screen, there's a chat box. So if you've got any questions, we will do the questions at the end, but if you think of them as you're going through, if you just want to bang them into the chat box there, that'd be absolutely fantastic. As Sophie said, this will be on YouTube eventually, so you'll be able to see this entire webinar on YouTube. And in the bottom right hand corner, we've got a couple of links there that you can access to access our course catalogue and any additional free events that you may or may not want to sign up to. So we're going to look at planning, okay, and it's a very controversial topic, planning, at this moment in time, because obviously we live in a world where, you know, planning really has been shown to have very little effect because of the COVID situation, and the fact that the pandemic has blown most plans out of the water. So it's very important, and don't get me wrong. Okay, a lot of people think because I have an agile background and I'm very, very enthusiastic and a bit of an evangelist about agile practices, that means there's no planning. Okay, and that's completely wrong. If people think that of me, then they've got it completely wrong. If I came into your organisation as a governance role, then the first thing I would like to see is your plan. What I do know, though, and I'm sure that you guys know this as well, is that in the whole history of project management, very few plans have actually gone to plan. Okay, and to be fair, that's what makes project management exciting for me. It's the fact that there is a large element of the unknown within our projects, and therefore our plans are our baseline. And today we're going to have a look at a very important part of planning, and that is estimating. And it's called estimating throughout the project lifecycle, because one thing I want to encourage you is to not get anchored into a single way of estimating, not get anchored into this is the only way we do estimating, particularly throughout the life of the project. Because as we go through the project, we have to have a different view on estimating. Okay, so let's start off with some basic definitions. An estimate, guys, as far as the Oxford English Dictionary, which is the online version I've taken this from, okay, an estimate is a rough calculation or judgment, okay, or an approximate calculation. And that's the first thing that we ought to remember, that when we're doing an estimate, that it's never 100% accurate. Okay, and you know, if we did, we'd be making a living somewhere else, probably giving people 6 numbers to go on the lottery, that type of thing. So we should always look at estimating from a perspective of this is probably wrong. Okay? Because my second slide is what an estimate is not, and an estimate should never, ever be seen as a promise. Okay? So an estimate is not a promise. Yeah? You cannot promise the people, your stakeholders, your funders, yeah, those types of people, you cannot promise them, yeah, that your estimates are going to be 100% accurate, because they're not. And unfortunately, over time, this is what the estimate in project management has become. We play what a colleague and I once referred to. We were talking backwards and forwards about estimating and the right style of estimating. And we play in projects what we refer to as the lying game, where as a project manager, your sponsor quite rightly wants more certainty. That's their role. They're promising somebody something. Yeah. And therefore they want to take all uncertainty out of the project. And hopefully your sponsor realizes that they can't do that, but they would like to. So they look to you as a project manager, or they look to you as part of the project team and say, look, can you promise me that this will be the budget? And we only have to look at, projects like HS2 and the 2012 Olympic Games and next year's Olympic Games to see how budgets have increased and decreased over time because estimates have changed. They're not promises. And one of the best pieces of theory I've seen around this is by a gentleman called Barry Boehm. And Barry Boehm has done a lot of research on uncertainty within the project environment. And one simple diagram he came up with is called his funnel of uncertainty. And I'm not sure if you've seen this before. Here is Barry Boehm's funnel of uncertainty. It sounds a bit like a carnival ride, if I'm honest. Okay? And if you look at this, in this sort of area here, if I can just put the green pointer there, and hopefully that'll, yeah, this point here on the graph is point 0. So it's now. Okay? If you're just starting a project, this is where you are. And as you can see, the indicated level of uncertainty is huge. Because, and once again, you guys will recognize this from your projects. That when you start a project, the level of uncertainty is massive. You have to make massive assumptions. The most obvious being that the money will be there when you need it, or resources will be there when you need it. So you're making these massive assumptions, therefore you're introducing uncertainty, and of course, once again, just like we talked about last week, uncertainty means risk. And we're trying to mitigate and we're trying to manage the risk within our project. So making promises at the beginning of your project, yeah, just makes your life that little bit more difficult. Yeah. Whereas they just become a point as you move through the project. So as you move through the project, yeah, the amount of estimation you're doing is shortened. And we'll talk a few moments time about something called the planning horizon. And that planning horizon is shortening. Okay? And it's really important, guys, that we recognize that the planning horizon is shortening, and therefore our estimates can be a little bit more accurate, and therefore we can start to be more certain about the resource requirements that we're going to need within our project environment. So Barry Boehm's curve of uncertainty is all about managing your planning horizon. And just like a natural horizon, where it's as far as you can see naturally before the curvature of the earth takes what's happening beyond your sight. Within projects, there's a planning horizon. How comfortably can I plan in advance with a degree of certainty? And for most human beings in most projects, and I'm using the generalization, and I do appreciate, in most projects, it's somewhere in the region of about 2 to 3 months you can plan with certainty. So as project management has matured, as the practice of project management has matured, and I'm sure you've seen this in your own practice as well, yeah, that we start to recognise this, and therefore our plans tend to alter. At the most of us at the beginning of our project management career will try to plan everything down to the half hour, if possible, over a 3 or 4 year project. Yeah. I lived in, and project managed in the era of the Gantt chart, which seems to have dropped off a little bit now. But we had Microsoft Project in the 90s and the early 2000s. Yeah. And we almost competed to see how big our Gantt chart could be, how many lines it could be. And what we realised, and I have to put my hand up here, when I look back, one of my biggest mistakes I made in a project was actually to employ somebody to look after the Gantt chart. My Gantt chart was that complicated that I had to actually employ somebody to keep it up to date. Yeah, that's a big IT project for a local authority in London back in the late 90s. Okay, and I introduced that level of complexity. I actually introduced risk into my project. And it's, I need to recognise that, guys, that I made those mistakes and that I learned from those mistakes. So now most people who are very mature in their project management practice do what's called rolling wave planning, where you'll plan detail for the next month, 6 weeks, and then you'll have a roadmap beyond that, something that's sort of very low detailed that demonstrates the level of risk. And as you move through your project, your estimates become more accurate because you've got time to do what I did and what I do, which is reflect on practice and say, right, okay, what mistakes did I make? And how can I avoid those mistakes and improve on my practice as we move through the year? So your planning horizon is really important. And we have to think about simplicity. How simple is your project? Does it have certainty of outcome? Or does it have uncertainty of outcome? Have you seen it somewhere else? Yeah, if you've seen it somewhere else and it works, you've got a bit more certainty of outcome. So let's have a look at some techniques now. Okay? And really the techniques boil down into 2 different elements. There's relative and absolute estimating. And the first one, relative estimating, is what we would use at the beginning of the project, when you're thinking in big picture. Okay, so on the screen to the left of me, as you probably look at it, okay, are 5 food items. Which one is easiest to peel? Yeah. Just in your own head, think about it. Okay, which would I say was the easiest to peel? So for me, the banana is the easiest to peel. Okay, it's the simplest to peel. Okay, so I would give that that's a small job. Then we've got the satsuma. Okay, that's the next size job. Then we've got the apple. That's the next size job. Then we've got the grape. Has anybody ever tried to peel a grape? Yeah. Okay. And then we'd have the coconut. So we've got these relative. We can look at the jobs within our project or within our organisation, and we can say, okay, which is the simplest? And we can use that for relative estimating. Now, the trick with relative estimating is to not think about units of measurement. Okay, don't reduce it down into units of measurement, because all that does is it adds the complexity back. All you're doing is saying that's a banana. That job is a banana. And when somebody says to you, what does that mean? It literally means it's the easiest job of the bunch. No pun intended. Yeah. So relative estimating does that. And you can think about it. In my courses, we draw boxes. Okay, or we look at other elements. I had a colleague of mine who used to get the delegates thinking about dogs and how to manicure a dog or shave a dog, and you have different sizes and different complexity within the dog and how many dogs there were. and we try to put a relative estimate in. But like I said, with relative estimating, the trick is to forget about the units of measurement. You cannot equate a banana to a number of days, or a number of hours, or a number of people, or gallons, etc., etc. So at the beginning of Barry Bones' curve of uncertainty, going back to it, we're going to use relative estimating. Something that will allow us to think about the size and the complexity of a job or a task without worrying too much about exactly how long it's going to take, or exactly how much it's going to cost, or exactly how much resources we're going to need. We can think about skills, but we don't have to think about numbers. Then as we move through the project, we'll change the way that we estimate into what's known as absolute estimating. And this diagram here, the reason I put this arrow over here is because it's a bottom-up approach. So you take each of these headline jobs at the top there, OS, hardware, mail service, and you break it down into a number of different activities or tasks. Now this, of course, must be done very near to the actual undertaking of that task. Yeah? So you've moved the planning horizon along. You're further along in your project. And you're just looking at the next 6 weeks and you're saying, right, the big jobs over the next 6 weeks are these 3 jobs. We've got to put the hardware in, we've got to implement the operating system, and we've got to implement the mail service. And then you break that down. And then you can allocate resources to each one of these jobs. So I'll need 2 people and they'll take a day. So once again, you can see the change straight away. We've moved from ignoring measurements to actually taking them on board and actually working with them. Now they're still potentially inaccurate. Okay? So we need, when you're actually doing absolute estimating, the one thing I'd encourage you to do is involve everybody who's going to actually be part of the job. Yeah? Excuse me. So this is, introducing your resources, your team, into the planning exercise. Because if you involve the whole team in absolute estimating, you get ownership from the team. Yeah, we said that was going to take 2 days. Plus, you get lots of different perspectives. Yeah? I remember taking on a job where we promised the customer that they would have 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, access to their system. And then we were doing this exercise, and along comes a tester and says to me, "How are we going to test that, Mark?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, how are we going to test whether this is up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?" Yeah? He says, "Because that means testing forever." He says, and that's the estimate I would put on testing. So it's really important, guys, that you involve the whole team and involve the whole team to get their ownership. And then once you've done that and you've got their ownership, make sure that then when you get to the end of the activity, as part of what's referred to as a retrospective, you look at those estimates. So once again, you can become better at estimating. Yeah? What led us to be right and what led us to be wrong. Okay. So, at the beginning of your project, use relative estimating. Okay? Make sure that the whole team's involved with that, but you ignore the measurements, because all that will do is lead you to over-promising. And one of my delegates on a number of occasions have said to me at this point, but the sponsor needs to know how much the project's going to cost. And for me, that's the wrong question. At the beginning of the project, it shouldn't be the project manager telling the sponsor how much the project's going to cost. If that's the case, turn back round to your sponsor and say, how much have you got? Because that's a better question. How much are they willing to spend on the project? What is their budget for the project? Because your job is to plan within that budget. and to manage their expectations within their budget. It's the same conversation you would have over a time frame. Do they have a hard deadline? Because you will plan up to that hard deadline. So at the beginning of the project, don't get trapped into false promises. Yeah? Avoid measurements. If they ask how much is it going to cost, say how much have you got? And if they say got 15 million, then I'll do it for 15 million. Is that a constraint? Is that something I need to think about when I'm planning? And we've got another webinar coming up about scope management, which is obviously the answer to that particular question. So look out for that one. It's in the pipeline. Whereas towards the end of the project, as you get into the delivery phase, then you can start to promise, but make sure you're aware of your planning horizon. Make sure that you're aware of how long you're promising over. Okay? And adjust your plan accordingly. Because planning is not a single event in the life of a project, it's an ongoing activity. You plan and you replan and you replan based on the best information that you've got. Okay? Excuse me. So, we're going to turn it over to questions now. So if anyone's got any questions, I know that Sophie, when she comes back in, has got a few frequently asked questions that we've put together. But if any of you want to put any questions into the chat, if you've not understood anything that I've talked about, that's fine. Yeah, that happens on a regular basis. Oh, there's zoomed into the big head again. But Sophie, over to you.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. Okay, so while we wait for you guys to pop in a few questions, like Mark said, we have a couple of frequently asked questions that we have kind of stored up that we'll address for you guys. So the first one is, I've heard one of the team members talk about story points. What are they and how do they relate to days or hours? So over to you, Mark.
Well, the simple answer is if you've had some of your teams talking about story points, they don't refer to hours or days. That's one way. It's like me talking about bananas. It's one way of turning your estimate away from focusing on time and cost. So you talk about story points, and there's a whole technique called planning poker, which utilizes story points, which allows the team to estimate complexity and size relative to one another. So something that's a story point of 1 will be half the job of something that's a story point of 2. And you usually go up to somewhere around about 55, sometimes up to 100 with story points. But it's just a technique called planning poker for allowing you to relative.
Fair enough. Okay, the next one that we sometimes get asked is, my boss wants exact figures before she will sign off on the start of the project. What do you advise, as I know it will be wrong?
Now that's a really good one, and we have this all the time, and yes, it will be wrong. Okay, and if you commit to an amount, your boss is going to see it as a promise. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is sit down with the boss and try to, in the right way, explain the level of uncertainty within your project. And a much better question is what I referred to on the webinar. Ask them how much they're willing to spend. Okay? And then sit down with them and include them in the planning so that they can see whether that's a reasonable figure or an unreasonable figure. And if they've done what they should have done, which is built a business case before the project started, they should be very understanding over that. Most organisations have a maximum spend per project.
Okay, so the next one is, can I run my project without using estimating?
The answer is yes. Okay, there is a movement right now which is talking about moving away from estimating, because all they do is cause problems within an organisation. Okay. Now that means that your sponsor has to be very brave to start with. Okay, because they are the people that are promising people. They're the accountable ones. But you can work off your business case. If you've done a proper business case for your project, which says, right, this is the amount we're willing to spend and this is what we want from the project, and we think it's a reasonable amount for that, with a little bit of contingency, you can plan without estimating. Okay, and that might be the subject of another webinar, or it's certainly a conversation we have in a lot of the courses that we run.
Great. The last one of the frequently asked questions that we're going to address today is, what's the worst situation you've been in with regards to estimating?
Right, the couple of worst situations. One is where I got it completely wrong. Once again, oops, sorry. It was an IT project for a large insurance company, and we completely failed on the audit. We did a pre-project audit to decide how many people there were, and we built the quote around that, and we built the business case around it, and we missed an entire site of the organisation off, another 300 users. So I basically had to cap in hand back to the what's called, we were using Prince2 at the time, so we'll call them the executive, it's called a sponsor if you want, and basically saying we got it completely wrong. That was one situation. Another one was a small charity in Bethnal Green, funnily enough, and they put a request for change in during their project. So they wanted to expand the scope of the project and include telephony into the project, and I forgot to add the cost of the hardware into the estimate. That's
not ideal, but it just goes to show that mistakes can be made, but they can be rectified. So that's good.
Yeah, once again, what I'd refer people back to is business case. To let your business case drive your project. So even when I got estimates wrong, go back to the sponsor, sit down, look at the business case. Yeah, does the business case say, right, okay, we just can't carry on, or does the business support that extra spend that you need? And more money should be driven through the business case exercise.
Fab. So that was the last of our frequently asked questions, and if you guys haven't got any questions for us, then I think that's the end. So
it's not quite the end, Sophie. I've got if they're thinking of questions, I've got a couple more slides that I just want to share with people, if you don't mind. Okay.
Go for it.
So guys, if you've been on our webinars before, you'll know about follow-on training. Here at Cert Unlimited, we've got a catalogue of courses. If you go to the web links and hit the courses, highlight the courses and then browse to, it'll open up our website to look at that. Most of the techniques that we talked about today can be found on Prince2 courses or found on APM courses, but we have a project management fundamentals course for people who just want to start from scratch. They might be booking onto a project management course and they've been given like 40 days worth of pre-reading or something daft like that. One day, quite succinct, quite informative, gets people on the first rung, gets people understanding what projects are all about. We have a reward for everybody who's been on this particular course, webinar, sorry, so 20%. Type in PM series as you do your booking, or if you want to talk to somebody, if you just drop an inquiry in, somebody will call you. It might be myself, it might be Sophie, it might be Carl, or other people that are part of the organisation will drop you a line and talk to you and advise you about courses that are available. And especially those of you who might not be employed or between opportunities at the moment, the Job Centre will actually fund some of our courses. So, it might be worth a chat with one of us and we'll give you some advice on that. Our next webinar is Prince2 with Agile. Something we get asked about all the time. Is Prince2 Agile though? Well, let's hope he is, to be fair. So, yeah, we're going to talk about that next week. So get signed up, guys. And then finally, and some of you will have seen that before if you've been on our website, this is what we offer at the moment So we've got a fundamentals series. We've got 3 courses in there. We've got the fundamentals Agile, fundamentals for Scrum, and fundamentals for project management. We do the Agile project management and the Agile digital services courses, but very excited about this, Sophie. Yeah. Oh, press the wrong button. There we. Oh, come on. Oh, what's happened there? Yeah, we've got a load of new courses coming along in the new year. That seems to have failed, but story of my life sometimes, I think that is. Let's see if I can get it. There we go. So we've got a whole heap of new courses coming online at the beginning of next year. So, book now, get your bookings in, go and have a look at what we've got on there on our website, and send us a link, and hopefully, you can get yourself on a course early next year for Prince 2 or Prince 2 Agile or the new MSP.
Just to quickly answer Jennifer's question, next week's webinar is on Tuesday. It'll be at 1 o'clock again. So get signed on to that. No problems.
No problems.
Okay, I think that's it then. Thank you everyone for taking part today. We will have, like we say, more of these to come throughout next week and throughout December. So we will see you then. So thank you everyone.
Okay, thank you very much everybody.